Well, let's begin negatively, what they shouldn't be. Number one, God Almighty has not yet gone on vacation and appointed either you or me to fill in. We are not put on this earth to judge people. Now, I'm pretty good at it, but that ain't why I'm here. Number two, all you have to do is answer this question. What can I do to help? What can I do to help? My answer is very clear. I've been given permission and an assignment to function full-time in alcoholism. I don't know what your answer is. Find your own. Now, please, before we leave attitudes, if the primary source of all attitudes is parental, where do you think your kids are going to get theirs? I mean about everything. Who of you in this room would want a son or a daughter to grow up to be exactly like you? Good Lord, that's terrifying. I wouldn't want anybody to grow up to be exactly like me. So much for attitudes. Number two, learn to recognize the disease through a knowledge of its symptoms. Now, the principle behind this guideline is the simplest thing on the face of the earth. I can't help you for your alcoholism unless I see you've got it. What sense would it make for me to say to one of you, I think you better see a doctor about that boil on your neck, unless there's a boil on your neck? How can I help you for your drinking problem unless I see you have one? Now, how are we going to learn alcoholism? Ladies and gentlemen, please believe this is the easiest thing on the face of the earth. You can learn most of a working knowledge of alcoholism in about a day and a half. There are books, pamphlets, films, lectures, workshops, seminars, institutes of alcohol study. By the way, the best literature is AA pamphlets. Number one, they're brief. You can read one in 20 minutes. Number two, they're free. Number three, there's not a wasted syllable, because number four, they're written by pros who have been there. Where do you learn anything best? Ask the man that owns one. If you're going to buy a pair of roller skates, you don't go to a Cadillac owner and ask about performance. You want to know something about alcoholics? Go to where they are. Go to where they are. So I'm inviting everybody to some open AA meetings. They are just that, open, when announced as such. They're open to interested people. A lot of non-alcoholics who would, let's say, have a mother dying of cancer would read everything they could get their hands on about it. My youngest sister has 7 children. The 6th was born a dwarf. When that kid was born, everybody in the family read everything they could get their hands on about dwarfism. Oddly enough, somebody's got an alcoholic in the family that's been frustrated and screaming for 17 years, and they haven't bothered to find out anything about it. The paradox of the thing is unbelievable. It's a weird thing to look at non-alcoholics and say, come to an AA meeting. Now you want to know something about attitudes? Most non-alcoholics wouldn't get caught dead at an AA meeting. Can you see them walking in? You know, who's looking? And hold it. You get inside, and this is the big one. How will they know I'm not one? Attitudes are there. What I'd like to do here is give all of you a working knowledge as to what an alcoholic is, and we'll point out a few early symptoms, because, ladies and gentlemen, a moron can diagnose it in the latter stages when he's about dead. And you don't need brains to diagnose it. You need a pair of eyes. If a child can diagnose it, you ought to be able to. You want to know what an alcoholic is? Go into the home of an alcoholic and talk to the kid. Kids just don't say things like, my mother and dad are always fighting. Sometimes he hits her. I don't bring kids home from school anymore. I despise weekends. I have to be there. The kid gets right to the heart of the matter and says the obvious. My daddy drinks too much. That's what's wrong in this house. You know what an alcoholic is? Let me give you, for instance, up in Alaska on one of these radio talk shows from 10 to midnight, I was called at 11:30 by a young fellow about 22. He said, Father, I just drink beer. He was drinking at the time. I said, are you drinking now? He said, yes. He said, I drink a lot of beer, usually a 6-pack or twice that much every night, and on weekends I do a little heavy drinking. But he said, now, I've never lost work. I've been commended for my job. I don't have hangovers. On and on he went. He went on for about 8 minutes. And at the end, he asked the magic question, do you think I am or could become an alcoholic? I said, son, I don't even know you. I wouldn't know you if I fell on you. I never saw you with a glass in your hand, but I know this. I like string beans. But I don't call radio stations at 11:30 at night and ask some total stranger if I got a problem with them. Of course the kid has a problem with his drinking. I call it alcoholism. You know what an alcoholic is? My definition is based on a self-evident truth. You don't prove self-evident truths, they're self-evident. For example, what causes problems is one because it causes problems. Now, I can't explain that. Neither can you. You buy it or you don't. There's a hole in the sidewalk in the front of your house. And in the last 4 years, you have tripped and busted your leg 6 times. Now, I'd like to submit this for your serious intellectual consideration. The hole is a problem. Fill it up. You know what we do? We sit on a porch with our leg in a cast, and we intellectualize about causes. Well, the reason I broke my leg last week was because it was dark. The time before that, I tripped over a roller skate and fell into the hole. The intellectual sits on a porch with both legs in cast. He's smart. Listen to him. This is a rainy area of the country. The soil is very porous. When the rain hits the soil, it makes it soggy, and it eroded, and it ate. Fill the hole up, jerk, or you're going to break your leg again. Now, please, you want to know what an alcoholic is? An alcoholic is somebody whose drinking makes problems. An alcoholic is somebody whose drinking makes problems. It's that simple. I don't care how serious the problems are. I don't care how far apart they are. I don't care how early they are. If the drinking causes trouble, it is. Get rid of the drinking, or the trouble will increase. Remember the marvelous story of the Emperor's Clothes? This man wanted the most beautiful suit in the kingdom. He couldn't get it, so he pretended he had it, and he announced it to the whole kingdom that he had the most beautiful suit in the world. And one day, without a stitch on, he hopped on a horse and drove through the kingdom. And all the PhDs were sitting on the wall saying, "Look at that beautiful jacket. Aren't those lovely shoes?" And a little kid says, "He's naked." A little kid can spot things that we intellectualize about. All right, what are some of the early symptoms that indicate this illness? Number 1, lying. Ladies and gentlemen, we speak of sexual aberration and unnatural acts. They pale into insignificance compared with a lie. You know what a lie is? It's a prostitution of the mind. That is unnatural. Lie about your drinking, you have a drinking problem. I'm not talking about the verbal lie. "George, have you been drinking?" He says, "No, honey," and passes out. All right, we know that's a lie. What I'm talking about is living the lie. Have you ever functioned in such a way as to convince people you're not drinking when you're drinking? An alcoholic who drinks in the morning gets onto an elevator and holds his breath for 91 floors so you won't smell it. He's known as the blue variety. Take a non-alcoholic who's been drinking in the morning. He steps on an elevator. You say, "You've been drinking?" He says, "Yeah, I just came from a wedding reception." Why? I use one question to diagnose alcoholism. One question. Do normal drinkers do this? If the answer is no, you're talking about abnormalcy. Gulping and sneaking drinks. Case in point, the closet drinker. I'm going to slam you in the head with the obvious now. Do you know a normal eater who goes into a closet to eat a Clark bar? I know a few abnormal eaters who do that. If any of you men were to go home tonight and see your wife sneak out of the dining room, into the bathroom, open the toilet tank, pull out a bottle of milk and drink 3 shots, you'd have her committed. Alcoholics drink this way all the time. We laugh at them. And then there's weak bladder Willie. He's the guy who has to go to the bathroom 8 or 9 times before lunch on a Monday. Everybody, watch the reaction. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to see attitudes, our own included? Watch what happens when old Willie or his female counterpart, the secretary, gets up to go to the John. We all know why. She's got a hangover, right? But you don't drink at your desk. So she picks up the purse with the bottle in it and heads for the lavatory. Guess what we do? We wink, we nudge, and we giggle. Girl has a terminal disease, and we think it's funny. All you have to do is ask your question, do normal drinkers drink in the toilet? Not usually. Where are you going, Henry? Get a martini. Excuse me. You don't do that. Normal drinkers don't do that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why do we fail to recognize the disease in its early stages? One of the most prevalent misconceptions about alcoholism on earth. If an alcoholic is still functioning, he can't be one. See, when that girl gets back to her desk, she's the most efficient secretary in the building. So we don't diagnose it, and we let her die. Number 3, alcoholism is addiction to alcohol. We know very little about addiction. We know 2 things, precious little else. Number 1, all addiction externalizes itself in compulsive use. The alcoholic drinks the way he drinks because he can't not drink that way. It has nothing to do with willpower. Nothing to do with willpower. He can't help it. The normal drinker can't understand this because he doesn't have it. He doesn't have. Why don't you just stop at 3? You know, if you drink more than that, you're going to get fired. And he winds up drunk. We can't understand that. But once you grasp the nature of addiction, that the addict uses compulsively, you've had it. If you do not grasp that notion, you will never, ever understand the alcoholic. Once you do grasp that notion, you can almost predict his irrational behavior. So when somebody comes up to you and says, why, she was drunk at her daughter's graduation, you say, of course she was. That's what's wrong. Alcoholism is addiction to alcohol. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if there are any of you here who can't understand alcohol addiction, try any of the other 4. There are 5 basic addictions: narcotics, alcohol, food, gambling, and work. And there's only one that isn't serious: the work addict, the compulsive cleaner. You ever been in a home that's so clean looks like nobody lives there or would want to? You're sitting there and the hostess will empty the ashtray 19 times in a half hour. And you don't smoke. You feel guilty about having your feet on the floor and there's nowhere else to put them. You know. All right. Those things are a little bit funny. The other addictions are perfectly serious. The alcohol addict drinks alcohol because he can't not drink alcohol. Number 4. I want to help. I see he's got it. He has no control over it. What do I do? Confront the alcoholic with the fact of his illness. How should the confrontation be made? By the right person with the right words at the right time in the right place. What are they? I don't know. If I did, I could save a nation. But I can tell you that I would like to discuss confrontation in general. Number 1, there are a lot of people who are recovered alcoholics who say out of this side of their mouths, yes, alcoholism is a disease. I wish those dumb doctors knew it. It's an illness of body, mind, emotion, and soul. And yet out of this side of their mouths they say, but I'm not going to help him until he makes a rational decision about his health and asks me to help him. If you have a 5-year-old who needs dental care and is afraid or doesn't realize about dentistry, and he doesn't want to go, you grab him and you take him. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a myth about coercion and the alcoholic. Yes, you can force an alcoholic into treatment. It's just that you can't force him to respond to it. I don't want to hear this garbage about leading horses to water and not making them drink. I know that. But you can lead them there, let them smell the water, and make them thirsty. Who is the right person? Preferably someone in authority. The boss pulls the employee in and says, go into treatment or seek new employment. He said, yes, sir. Let me tell you something about a confrontation. It does not just point out what is wrong. You have a drinking problem. It also offers a possible solution. I know where you can get help, and I'll take you there. You see, if you just tell me I have a problem and stop there, I'm going to learn 2 things about you. You're moralizing and you're condescending. Then you're going to learn something about me. I won't be listening. Tell me where I can get help. And if you've been to a few meetings yourself, you'll know where to take me. What are the right words? I don't know. It's a studied, judgmental thing. I know a man whose life was saved by a son whom he adored. He came home drunk one night, and the kid said, Dad, you stink. 3 words saved a man's life. Saved his life. He could have said it the night before and been cursed for his pains. The right place, I don't know, but you don't degrade a sick person by bawling him out in a room full of people. I know that much. You don't talk to him when he's drunk. He's all drugged up. The best time to get any alcoholic is when he's in pain. Ladies and gentlemen, pain is God's greatest gift to the alcoholic. No alcoholic is more blessed than the one who arrives at that point in his life where he wakes up in the morning, looks into a mirror, and experiences an overwhelming desire to puke because he can't stand what he's looking at. That is a gift. Pain is the greatest gift that God gives alcoholics. You know what's behind that? This is the underlying principle. When you hurt bad enough to want to quit hurting, you will do something to stop the pain. You know that toilet seat that has that opening in the front? I'm serious. That was invented by an alcoholic who got tired of getting hit in the back of the neck with it. Number 5, make the alcoholic responsible for his behavior. I'm not talking about moral guilt, I'm talking about legal responsibility. Here's a kid who hits a baseball and it goes through a window. He goes next door and he says, Miss Smith, I hit that ball, I'm sorry. She says, I forgive you. That'll be $12.98. You pay for the glass. AA says, made a list of persons we had harmed, became willing to make amends to them all, made direct amends. So the therapy of AA, I have found out from hundreds of AA members, backs me up in this. Make the alcoholic responsible for his behavior. Why, ladies and gentlemen, what is the underlying principle here? Again, it's the simplest thing on earth. Every time you pick up the tab for the alcoholic, you just bought him his next drunk. It doesn't make sense. Every time a wife makes good a bouncy check, she just gave him permission to write another one. It doesn't make sense. Alcoholism is a family disease, and families need treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, it was in Newsweek magazine in the medicine department not too overly long ago. They are switching now from one-on-one therapy to family therapy. Most people are members of a family. Because there are a few who are not. There are loners around. But most people belong to a family, and every problem in that family affects the whole family. Families need treatment. I've met several men who have doctorates in family therapy, and they do nothing but that. Over 50% of recovered alcoholics come from an alcoholic parent or two. Let me show you how sick the non-alcoholic member of an alcoholic family can get. I know a couple back in Maryland. I know them very well. I've eaten in their home. At the height of his drinking, he allowed her to believe it was her fault, and she believed it too. She's very timid at best. That woman was reduced to being a robot. She would not hang her clothes except at 2 a.m. in the dark. She didn't want people to look at her. She used to scotch tape the blinds on the first floor of her house so the neighbors couldn't look in and see that he was gone. Her 5-year-old used to tell her what to put on the table for meals. Non-alcoholics who live with alcoholics become as sick or sicker than the alcoholics. Case in point, a family that I know, the alcoholic husband has gone. He left 8 years ago. The mother is strong. She's a nurse. She went back to work. She supported the family, paid the mortgage, etc., etc., etc. She is so full of bitterness and hostility that he is still the sole topic of her conversation. Every word out of her mouth is negative, critical. What's so tragic? She's raising 4 kids. It is my opinion that the family needs treatment. Back at home, I know a man who belongs to AA. He's a 75-year-old pharmacist. He has about 30 years of sobriety. 3 years ago, his 50-year-old son came into treatment. And since then, his 3 kids came into treatment. One was 16, one was 19, and one is 28. On and on. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what causes alcoholism. I only know that it is caused. What can we do about it? How do we treat the whole family? By knowing all of the resource people in the community and using them. Get to know your alcoholism resources. And any one single person who believes that he alone can get an alcoholic completely well is a fool. Alcoholism is the most complete illness known, body, mind, emotion, and soul. And it takes a network of people to get the job done. Yes, the surgeon saves your life, but he has an anesthesiologist and 6 nurses to help him. And he's got post-operative care up there on the ward after you come out of surgery. It takes a network of people to get a family well. I believe